It's called Opening the Gates of Hell. Musk says he will revive banned accounts. The Twitter chief says he will reinstate accounts suspended for threats, harassment, and misinformation beginning next week. And there are a few things to share from here. Here's one. Quote, Apple and Google need to seriously, this is a quote from the piece, but it's also a quote from someone named Alejandra Caraballo. Apple and Google need to seriously start exploring booting Twitter off the App Store, said Alejandra Caraballo, clinical instructor at Harvard Law's Cyber Law Clinic. What Musk is doing is existentially dangerous for various marginalized communities. It's like opening the gates of hell in terms of the havoc it will cause. People who engage in direct targeted harassment can come back and engage in doxing, targeted harassment, vicious bullying, calls for violence, celebration of violence. I can't even begin to state how dangerous this will be. So that entire paragraph basically is a quote from this person, Alejandra Caraballo, who, well, must be important. This person is at Harvard Law. Except they're not at Harvard Law. They're at Harvard Law's Cyber Law Clinic, and Alejandra Caraballo is a trans person who is one of the most bullying and horrifying people on Twitter. And when I went to remind myself of that fact, I found that Alejandra has blocked me. So you can always see what people tweet by not going in as yourself, and so it's possible to see that this Caraballo character is indeed full of censorious rage and a lack of recognition of reality. And there's a bunch of claims here by someone who is simply at an institute called the Cyber Law Clinic that exists somehow within the affiliation of Harvard Law, who, pull quote, was then turned into a headline for Washington Post. Okay, so that's gives you a sense of what Washington Post is promulgating on the world as the effect of Elon Musk's attempt to restore a lack of censorship to Twitter. Scroll down a little bit more in this piece and you get, experts say that bots and bad actors can easily skew the results of a Twitter poll, and so basing decisions on one is irresponsible. Quote, a Twitter poll can be manipulated. There's nothing scientific or rigorous in any way about what he's doing. It's true, said Sarah T. Roberts, an associate professor at UCLA and faculty director for UCLA's Center for Critical Internet Inquiry, who previously worked at Twitter researching content moderation processes. So the two main people who are being cited in this article appear to have affiliations with elite institutions, right? It's Harvard and UCLA. And we now have Fairfax on screen for those only watching. And you could show the full screen now so that people can enjoy the full Fairfaxiness of it all. Our epic tabby. Oh no. And he's gone. Sarah T. Roberts, the associate professor at UCLA, which is more of an affiliation than a clinical instructor or whatever Caraballo is at the Cyber Law Institute at Harvard. But the way that Taylor Lorenz has written this, it would appear that Sarah Roberts is an associate professor of, a real field. And no, it doesn't take much to discover that actually what Sarah Roberts is an associate professor of at UCLA is in fact gender studies, which you might have predicted if you had looked at anything that she has done, either in her former role researching content moderation processes at Twitter, or now as an associate professor of gender studies at UCLA. So just one more thing about this, and then one other article from Washington Post this week. Glenn Greenwald nailed this with his assessment. Breaking, allowing those disliked by liberals to be heard on the internet will literally kill many people. Screaming face emoji. Warn the most neurotic, mentally unwell, petulant, petty tyrants who have declared themselves online safety experts and are now called that by liberal media outlets. He follows up. Taylor Lorenz miraculously found 3 or 4 people more neurotic, clearly unstable, and censorship happy than she, bestowed them with fake expertise titles, and now the Washington Post is blasting out her alarmist asylum-worthy babbling to millions, #journalism. That I don't know if Greenwald is always that snarky, but that struck me as just perfect in terms of describing what actually this is. This is one person who's got a sphere of equally nutso people who don't know reality when it is right in front of them. And Lorenz is citing her little band of ridiculous friends, and the Washington Post is putting it across their headlines.
Yeah, it's I don't know that I would call Greenwald snarky. He's very, very sharp.
This felt snarky.
It's a little snarky,
Yeah.
but I think like many of us, he has found that no institution is capable of functioning. And so he is now out here in the Wild West being a journalist and then also being forced to comment on the environment. Instead of just doing journalism, he's now forced to comment on the environment. And what he's pointing to, for anybody who missed it, is the idea that there is an ideology that absolutely depends on a set of rules that applies to others and not to them. That is the only way that this ideology makes its way in the world. And so the point is, all of the hand-wringing and pearl-clutching and fainting couch reaching that is going on is people who have gotten used to having the walls have ears and a bias in favor of their perspective, are now not so interested in living in a world where anything can be said and the platform cannot be brought down on people's heads for, saying that there's evidence that ivermectin works, or that, it's a mistake for us to encourage or allow children to be surgically altered because they utter something that someone takes as an indication that they will be trans or something like this.
Yep.
You need a biased environment. But I would also just point out, for those who are not paying close attention to what the Washington Post is, the Washington Post is a once great newspaper that is now owned by Jeff Bezos, a direct competitor of Elon Musk. I would assume in many realms, but in one very clearly, he is also running a private space program. So this is somebody who has a personal axe to grind, potentially, and has major contracts with the CIA. So there's a question about what the Washington Post is and why it takes such an odd perspective and why it is broadcasting the opinions of people who clearly don't have a position from which to say something meaningful and authoritative, but are being used as pseudo-authorities to, give the thinnest veneer of legitimacy to these absurd opinions.
Yes.
And so, anyway, that's the environment we're living in. No newspaper works, no platform works, no university works, no science journal works, and one individual may, and I don't say this with certainty because I don't know, but one individual may be in the process of attempting to create a single place that functions in order to allow a balanced discussion of things about which we naturally disagree. All right? Yeah, go ahead.
One more piece from the Washington Post,
Sure.
with that frankly necessary background as to what it now is. It doesn't, with a change of ownership, it doesn't come with a change in the banner, right? It still claims that it's the central message of its being is democracy dies in darkness.
Yep.
I believe. I haven't actually looked at the masthead, a physical masthead of the Washington Post.
Is this an
recently.
observation or is that a threat?
Oh my God. Yeah. So that November 24th piece by Lorenz that I just quoted, some of the supposed experts that she's got bolstering, not bolstering, creating her entire argument in that piece, also cites an earlier Washington Post piece, earlier only by 2 days, which is this one, which you can show on my screen. I will also point out that for those of you who've been watching, I didn't point out with the previous one, but they're both of these pieces are filed under technology.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got one of those experts, the gender studies person at UCLA, running some sort of a internet information thing where these aren't people, I think, who actually understand anything about technology. This is the societal implications of choices that people who are running tech companies are making, which is actually totally different from technology. And it's actually the same error that is being made with regard to science. Right? The stuff that's being published in Nature and Science is actually, well, we really feel strongly about the societal implication of this thing that might originally have been found out by science. So we're going to claim that the thing, that our feelings about it, wrong though they may be, are the science. And here too, we have, this claiming to be science. This is the Washington Post, November 22nd. Musk's free speech agenda dismantles safety work at Twitter, insiders say.
Wait. First of all, there's the beautiful insiders say, right, which is like fact checkers say or scientists say or any one of these garbage claims.
Yep.
But the other thing is the phrase dismantles safety work.
Well, so the first I'm not going to. We could spend hours on just this article.
Yeah.
Just the very first anecdote that they provide to, make it clear to the readers that this is really happening. Musk's free speech agenda is dismantling safety work at Twitter. So say the insiders, and they would know. Here we go. Hours after Elon Musk took control of Twitter in late October, the trust and safety team responsible for combating hate speech on the site received an urgent directive: bring back the Babylon Bee. To some Twitter employees, the order was troubling. The self-described Christian satirical site had been banned since March for refusing to delete a tweet naming Biden health official Rachel Levine its, quote, Man of the Year. Levine is a transgender woman, and, this is not what the Washington Post say, but therefore a man. And the tweet violated a 2018 rule prohibiting Twitter users from targeting transgender people by referring to them by the name or gender they used before transitioning. Used before transitioning. Assigned at birth.
Right.
Wrong, Washington Post, again.
Well, and I would point out that this has created, if you think, and I do think that there is an argument that it is not decent in the case of somebody who is actually experiencing gender dysphoria and makes the decision to transition, the kind thing to do is to treat them as the gender they aspire to be. However, this loophole.
You can still point out reality, and frankly, you can still even make fun of them because we're all allowed to make fun of people.
Right. Well, that's just the question. And especially, these papers have no standing, right? The idea that we are to pretend that Chelsea Manning gave documents to WikiLeaks is in violation with the facts of history, right?
Not if you believe that there is a gender essence that was inside. Jason, was it?
No, it was Bradley.
Oh, no, this is Bradley.
Bradley.
Yes.
No, my point is, look, it's a goddamn newspaper. It has an obligation to say, look, there's nothing at odds with the idea of transitioning to say Bradley Manning conveyed documents to WikiLeaks and later transitioned and now is known as Chelsea.
But I feel... is known as, right? Like, I actually feel like this is kind of missing the point here. The Babylon Bee, which is hilarious if you don't know it, look it up, and yes, it is back on Twitter now, and good for it, made Rachel Levine, I did not find a picture of Rachel Levine here for you guys, but made Rachel Levine Man of the Year, which is, wrong, but not because it's calling Rachel Levine a man, because Rachel Levine is a man. And Rachel Levine has actually helped destroy a lot of lives through the trans nonsense and also now the COVID nonsense. Levine was like the head health official in Pennsylvania, I think, before being upranked by the Biden administration to something, and now gets to wear military regalia
She's an
somehow.
admiral. But look, I don't want to pretend that we know the answer to exactly how moderation should be done and what questions should be moderated and what questions. It's not a simple issue because there are things that we don't want on these platforms. Rachel Levine is a public figure. Rachel Levine has a family that she had as a man, and she is now in this role presenting herself.
Rachel Levine is the father of children.
Is the father of children. That is right. And the fact that that is a difficult sentence to say and have it be understood is evidence of where we are. It's not the responsibility of the Babylon Bee not to notice this, and it's not the responsibility of Twitter to police it, right? The point is, this is a perfectly legitimate thing to observe, is interesting, ironic, funny, bizarre. It is all of those things. And so anyway, Babylon Bee is back. And, again, the hand-wringing, the pearl clutching, the feigning couch reaching, all of the stuff that is occurring as a result of it.
But like Babylon Bee, having had its account taken down in March, so over half a year ago, for tweeting that Rachel Levine wins their Man of the Year award. Like, that was the offense. They were in Twitter jail for over half a year for that. And that thing is the lead anecdote in the Washington Post evidence that, my computer has, of course, gone back to sleep, so I can't see it, in their headlined article, Musk's free speech agenda dismantles safety work at Twitter, insiders say.
Right.
Because allowing people to see that a satirical site thinks that Rachel Levine should get Man of the Year is dismantling safety work.
Right. It's just the whole idea of invoking safety.
Yeah.
And I would point out a case that we keep referring to, but I still think, the Babylon Bee is back. The Dr. Rollergator account is not. The Dr. Rollergator account was suspended in February for obviously satirically suggesting, I believe that Jordan Peterson and Justin Trudeau avail themselves of white gloves with which to challenge each other by slapping each other across the face, and that was determined to be violence. And so what you can see in this is that the system has been turned into a partisan with rules that equate satire with violence, and then those rules are used to exclude people from conversation, which then destroys our ability to understand even what those in our community even think, because the conversation is now biased by a set of rules used to drive certain voices out by claiming that they were engaged in violence that they clearly weren't. And so anyway, the idea that there is anything noteworthy about somebody unhooking those unfair rules and having no built-in bias of the structure towards one perspective or another, the idea that that is in and of itself alarming enough to drive people off of Twitter, or to drive the Washington Post to report multiply on the hellscape that is apparently being opened up by free speech, a value on which almost all of us used to agree, right, is quite something.